And first of all, I just want to say that I think it's great that you're training people how to use Narcan. It's a really important and vital skill. And then let's get started with our project today. So we're going to do something that kind of plays on the theme that we went with last week about connection and reflection, but we're going to draw something else with it, make something new. And I think, you know, doing that is important, not only because it's good to have a little variety in your life, but also because it's important to remember that that process is constant. It's, you know, it's one thing to spend an hour or a day out of your life reflecting and focusing on connection. But it's something that you can always be doing. It's something that you can always come back to for your benefit or the benefit of others. That constant self-interrogation is an essential part of not only caring for yourself, but being part of a community. So just go ahead. We're just going to make basically a garden. And so just along the top, just start drawing one type of flower. It can be any type. It doesn't have to look like mine. I'm just drawing a very simple, you know, I'm not sure, like the flower that everyone draws, daisy or something. But we're going to just do rows of different types of flowers. And as you draw this, I invite you to take this time to think about how, despite the fact that these things may look different, they're all living things and they're all flowers. They are part of the same family. They may have different attributes, different climates in which they live, but they're still connected both by their very nature as flowers and by their membership of a larger ecosystem, just like we are members of a larger community. And you don't have to be using different colors like I am. I'm just going to do that so that you can sort of see where I'm working. But for now, I'm working on green. And go ahead, if you'd like, go ahead and tell us down in the chat what kinds of flowers are your favorites? What part of the year do you look forward to because you know you'll see a flower that you love, whether it's a daffodil or in my case, a pansy. You know, maybe it's a mountain wildflower or firecrackers in July. It feels like infinite variations on the types of beautiful life you can find in the world. And as you can see, I'm really taking my time with each flower. In no way do they all look the same, even within this row. They all look pretty different, but they're still part of their own little family. And I think that that's essential too, is as much as it's possible to categorize people or put them in groups, there still will always be uniqueness and variation within those groups. Okay, there's that first row finished. And we're basically just gonna work on this and get as much of the page filled as we possibly can. And I also invite you to keep drawing and keep working on this after the meeting is over, after the session is over, while you listen to the next session. And here I'm just drawing a little tulip. I'm gonna see if I can make my next tulip better. Little U shape, petals on the top and bottom, and then one on each side. You can try drawing that, or you can use a completely different pattern. You know, maybe you feel like drawing a rose or a poinsettia. As always, that creative choice is entirely up to you. And as you can see, as I'm going along, I'm sort of shifting the design and the motions that I'm using as I come to understand what I want this to look like. It almost looks like a little person raising their arms from close up. But that's a strategy that you can apply in your life in anything, you know? Allowing yourself to continuously have new understanding, learn new things, and grow from there. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to accept when you have learned something new and it makes you want to decide to change. And you can see I'm also adding little variations in my tulips here and there. This one has a longer petal on this side. This one has a longer petal on this side. Stay playful with it, you know? As always, we're not aiming for perfection, but we're also aiming to allow ourselves to relax, yes, but also to enjoy this moment. And I think an important part of that is finding playfulness and finding joy in what you're doing. Even if it's as simple as just varying the design of the flower that you're drawing. Okay, now we'll go ahead and move on to the next row. And then for this one, I'm gonna draw some poppies. Poppies are a truly fascinating flower. There are many, many varieties of them and they can grow, but depending on the variety, in almost any climate. Plus, they're really easy to draw because they just have this sort of folded over petal shape with very few petals, at least on some of them, and you can just sort of indicate the center. So this is another opportunity to get really playful with what you're drawing. But you know, I think we can learn a lot from the poppy. It's adaptable, it's changeable, and it's resilient. As are you. We all have the potential to be that. You can also draw the same thing in a different color and call it a lily pad. It also kind of looks like that. How you interpret things is up to you. And I think that's also a really important thing to remember is that you are, as much as you are conscious, in control of your perception. You decide what you're noticing. If you're noticing positivity, if you're noticing negativity, if you're noticing something that needs addressing in your life or in the lives of others, you know? You decide whether you're looking for those things. And you decide how to act on them. Okay, there are my poppies, my blobby little poppies. Now I'm gonna jump back to green. And let's try drawing an actual daisy with these thin petals sort of extending outwards from a smaller center. Again, as you go, you know, I invite you to consider how different all of these things are. Yes, they have petals. Yes, they're vaguely round, but there's so many variations other than that in these things. And maybe they developed in relation to their environment, or maybe it's just a fluke of nature. But they're all beautiful, and they all bring something to their own little flowery communities. Here on the page, in terms of contrast and in life. So as you go, maybe think about that. Maybe think about how that applies to your own life. What groups are you part of, or what families are you part of? And how do each of you help each other? Or how can each of you help each other? What do you appreciate? What do you notice? What makes everyone else unique and worth appreciation? And what families do you not consider yourself a part of? And can you push yourself to see the uniqueness, the distinct beauty in those communities, in those families? And can you find something that binds you to them, whether it's simply your common humanity, maybe a common experience, a common goal or love or hope or need? If you look for that connection, you'll see it everywhere. And as we finish up with this row in our garden, think about what flowers do, what flowers are for. Many flowers just exist as their own thing, but many other flowers are actually part of a tree or part of a larger whole. All right, I'm gonna try a kind of tricky flower here. Let's try for a daffodil, which has this sort of trumpet in the center, and then these leaves, these petals coming out. But yeah, think about what flowers are part of. Often they're part of a plant. They're the part of the plant that spreads pollen, spreads seeds. But even more so, some flowers are the precursor to fruits on trees, like an apple or orange blossom. So not only do they have their own unique attributes, but they are able to transform into something new that is also beautiful, and something that connects them to us more directly than we might originally think of. Not many people, with very few exceptions, spend a lot of time eating flowers, but of course many of the fruits that we eat, pumpkin, apple, orange, even peach, cherry, these things start their lives, start their existence as flowers, and much like caterpillars, they transform. So think about those transformations. Think about maybe transformations that have taken place in your own life. Maybe you consider yourself fulfilling one role before, and now you fulfill a different role now. Or maybe, perhaps you're in a moment in your life where, you know, all you can really do is continue to exist and take care of yourself. And that is a valid transformation, and often a necessary one. Periods of rest are essential to periods of growth. Even for flowers, those flowering trees, the flowers, wither away to make room for the fruit. Okay, there's our final daffodil. The next let's draw a pansy. As I mentioned before, that's one of my favorite flowers. And actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that pansies are actually edible. So just as a little added touch, I am gonna fill in the outside because they're usually two-toned. Just gently, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it does add that extra little bit of contrast from the poppy. And this is fun also because you can, again, be playful with it, because you're just filling in this outside area and there's no defined outline. You can just sort of scribble. And honestly, I think scribbling is relaxing, and it's also a valid part of art. Sometimes you just gotta scribble. And you can do this with a pen or a pencil or whatever you're drawing with, whatever you have on you. Again, I'm using these different colored pens so you can see where I am on the page. I hope that's helpful. Yeah, I also want to reiterate that you don't have to be following along exactly with what I'm doing. If there are different flowers that you'd like to draw, if you have favorite things, either yours or maybe the favorite flowers of your loved ones, you can try that. And just you can look up photos, but I haven't been doing so. I'm just drawing them from memory, and it's kind of fun imagining what things look like, trying to represent them as simply as possible. Although it's important to remember that there's a lot more to each of these things than that. Yeah, as we come up on our last few minutes, I want to return to the idea that this is a garden that you're creating on the page. And I want you to think about what that means. You know, what is a garden? Yes, it's a sort of a community of plants that are cultivated, but it's also unpredictable, and it is as much a living thing as a pet you might have, or as anything else. You have to take care of it, make sure that it's safe. And much like a community, it requires care. It requires an understanding of each different kind of plant's needs. And so as you exist in your community, I encourage you to keep those needs, your own and those of others, at the forefront of your mind, and be aware of how they might differ. Accept that they will differ, and that's not a bad thing. It's not a wrong thing. Difference isn't wrong. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I hope you're drawing along, but even if you aren't, I hope that this has been enjoyable for you, that it's gotten you thinking about some new things. I really appreciate this time that we have to come together each week, for my own benefit as well as for yours. It's really important to take time to be thoughtful, to make something simple that you can enjoy making, and to continue that practice, to make it a habit, to take time and think about your growth, the growth of others, consider new ideas, and think about your role in the world. So yeah, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next week.